I am Sarah Mitchell, 32 years old, and until last Christmas I believed my family was indestructible. Then my phone buzzed with Dad's voicemail. Christmas is cancelled. Expect a call from my attorney. 6 years prior, I had signed their $380,000 mortgage when they couldn't qualify independently. That evening, I didn't argue or beg. I simply texted back understood and quietly began removing my name from their loan. What followed was 48 hours of eerie silence, then chaos, 68 missed calls, frantic texts, and their lawyer practically pleading for answers. Holiday family drama strikes differently than any other time of year. So grab your favorite warm drink and tell me in the comments if you've ever experienced a Christmas catastrophe that transformed everything. If you're joining us for the first time, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. And please don't forget to subscribe to become part of our community of survivors and those who are thriving. Growing up in Maplewood, a charming suburban community just outside Seattle, I was the daughter who seemed incapable of disappointing my father. Dad, Thomas Mitchell, worked as a commercial real estate agent and possessed a hearty laugh that could echo throughout our entire 2-story colonial house. Mom, Patricia, maintained a part-time position as a dental hygienist, while dedicating her remaining hours to church volunteer work and organizing neighborhood social events. We embodied that quintessential picture, perfect American household. The family that adorned our home with more Christmas lights than any other house on the street, and coordinated matching pajamas for our Christmas morning photographs. Dad would wake us up at dawn with his special eggnog recipe, and Mom would already have cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. My younger brother, David, and I would race downstairs, knowing that Dad had spent hours arranging presents under the tree to create what he called the perfect Christmas tableau. Every December, we'd drive around looking at lights while singing carols at the top of our lungs, stopping for hot chocolate at Henderson's Diner, where the waitresses knew us by name. Those memories feel like they belong to a different lifetime now. Warm, golden, untainted by the reality that would eventually surface. The shift in our relationship was so gradual that I barely noticed it happening. After college, when I landed my first marketing job in Portland, Dad proudly told everyone his daughter was making it big in the city. I wasn't, not really. I was sharing a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and eating ramen more often than not. But I was independent and building something for myself. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, Dad's real estate business suffered badly. Properties weren't selling, commissions dried up, and suddenly the parents who had always seemed financially secure were calling me with temporary money problems. At first, it was small things. Helping with David's college textbooks, covering Mom's car repair. I never hesitated because they had given me everything growing up. By the time I turned 26, I had moved back closer to home and was climbing the corporate ladder at a digital marketing firm. That's when their mortgage troubles began. They had refinanced at the worst possible time, and their adjustable rate had skyrocketed. I still remember Dad's voice breaking when he called to tell me they might lose the family home. Just a rough patch, Sarah, he assured me, but the fear in his voice was unmistakable. Without a second thought, I agreed to sign their new mortgage for $380,000. My credit was excellent, I had a stable job, and the loan officer assured me it was just a formality. My parents would make all the payments. You're saving our home. Sweetheart, Mom had whispered, hugging me tightly in the bank parking lot after signing the papers. For a while, everything seemed fine. I bought my own condo, advanced in my career, and started building my savings again. But subtle shifts in our dynamic emerged. When I couldn't make it home for my cousin's wedding because of a work commitment, Dad made pointed comments about forgetting where you came from. When I started dating Marcus, who worked as a high school history teacher, Mom repeatedly asked if I was settling because you could do so much better with your potential. My brother David, who had dropped out of college and moved back home, always backed our parents in every disagreement. That's just how they are, became his mantra. Whenever I expressed frustration at their intrusion into my life choices, the entitlement crept in so slowly, I barely recognized it. Dad calling to borrow money for a golf club membership because I deserve something nice after all these years of hard work. Or Mom casually mentioning they were remodeling their kitchen and Since you're on the mortgage anyway. We just added a little to the home equity line. Each time I expressed concern, they'd remind me of all they'd sacrificed for me growing up. I started noticing a pattern. Their financial emergencies often coincided with my bonuses or promotions, which they somehow always knew about before I told them. The tightness in my chest when my phone displayed home calling became a physical warning sign I ignored for too long. By my 30th birthday, I had loaned them over $45,000 that was never repaid. Co-signed their mortgage and was listed as a guarantor on 3 of their credit cards. Yet somehow, whenever I achieved something, a promotion, my condo renovation, or my relationship with Marcus becoming serious, they found ways to minimize it or shift the conversation back to their needs. I was their successful daughter when they introduced me to friends, but in private, I was increasingly feeling like an ATM with emotional collateral. Last December marked my 3rd year with Marcus, and we'd recently moved into a beautiful craftsman-style house just 30 minutes from my parents. After years of cramped apartment Christmases, or celebrating at my parents' house, where I was still treated like a guest rather than family, I was thrilled to host the holidays in our new home. I spent weeks planning every detail, ordering a 9-foot Douglas fir, collecting family recipes, and hand-making personalized stockings for everyone, including David's new girlfriend, Emma, whom I'd never met. Marcus teased me about my color-coded shopping lists and the spreadsheet tracking each gift purchase. But he supported my excitement, helping me string lights along our porch railing and assemble the new dining table that would finally fit the whole family. This Christmas is going to be perfect, I told Marcus as we placed the angel atop our tree. Everyone together in our home. It feels like a fresh start. Marcus had squeezed my hand, but said nothing, his silence communicating what I wasn't ready to hear. The first red flag appeared 3 weeks before Christmas when I called Mom to confirm their arrival time. "Oh, honey, Dad and I might be a little late on Christmas Eve. We have to stop by the travel agency to finalize some details," she mentioned casually. Travel agency. "Are you planning a trip?" I asked, arranging pine cones in a bowl for the coffee table centerpiece. "Just a little Caribbean cruise for February," she replied. 35 years of marriage deserves a celebration, don't you think? I agreed, of course, but something didn't add up. Just 2 months earlier, they had called asking if I could help with their property tax payment because they were little short this quarter. After hanging up, I searched for the cruise line Mom had mentioned and discovered their basic package started at $3,200 per person, not including excursions, drinks, or flights to the departure port. My stomach tightened with a familiar feeling. The next day, I drove to my parents' house, planning to casually discuss the cruise. When I arrived, a brand new 65-inch smart TV was being installed in their living room. Dad proudly showed off its features, mentioning it was an early Christmas gift to ourselves. In their kitchen, shopping bags from high-end department stores lined the counters. "Just a few things for the cruise," Mom explained, showing me designer sundresses with price tags still attached. I took a deep breath and tried to approach the subject gently. "The cruise sounds amazing, but I'm a little confused. Weren't you having trouble with the property tax payment recently?" Mom waved dismissively. "Oh, that was nothing. Just a temporary cash flow issue. You worry too much, Sarah." Dad patted my shoulder. "We've got everything under control. In fact, we're thinking about remodeling the master bath next spring. The cruise is our reward for being so disciplined with our finances." I couldn't hold back anymore. "Dad, if you can afford all this, why did you need my help with the taxes? And last summer with the roof repair? And my name is still on your mortgage." Dad's expression hardened. "Are you keeping score after everything we've done for you? We raised you, put you through college, supported your career moves. Now that we want to enjoy our lives a little, you're counting dollars and cents." Mom joined in, her voice taking on the wounded tone I'd heard increasingly over the years. "I didn't realize our spending needed your approval, Sarah. We're still your parents, not children you need to monitor." I tried explaining that I wasn't monitoring them. I was concerned about the pattern and my own financial exposure with my name on their loans. But the conversation quickly deteriorated with Mom tearing up and Dad accusing me of being cold and calculating like those corporate types you work with. When I left, Nothing was resolved. That evening, Marcus found me staring at our Christmas tree, the lights blurring through my tears. After I explained what happened, he said gently, "Sarah, I've watched this cycle repeat for the 3 years we've been together. They claim hardship, you help, then discover they're spending lavishly. It's not sustainable, and it's not fair to you." Deep down, I knew he was right. But acknowledging the truth about my parents felt like a betrayal. The next week, David called. "Mum's really upset about your visit," he began without preamble. "Why are you giving them grief about the cruise? They work hard and deserve some enjoyment." I tried explaining my perspective, but David cut me off. "Let it go, Sarah. Not everything needs to be analyzed to death. They're not getting any younger. Just let them enjoy their lives without the guilt trip." When I mentioned my financial concerns, he scoffed. "You make plenty of money. It's not like you're struggling." Before hanging up, he added, "Just don't ruin Christmas with this attitude, okay? It's the one time of year we're all together." 2 days later, Dad called with news that they'd decided to get new carpeting installed before the holidays, to make the house nice for when you all visit after Christmas dinner at your place. When I reminded him that we had planned for everyone to stay at our house Christmas Eve and day, he said dismissively, "Well, your mother wants to wake up in her own bed on Christmas morning. We'll just come for dinner." All my careful planning, the guest room preparations, the Christmas morning brunch menu, the stockings waiting to be filled, suddenly seemed pointless. When I expressed disappointment, Dad's voice turned cold. "I think you've forgotten something important, Sarah. We're still the parents in this relationship. If you push this mortgage business, or try to control our spending again, there will be consequences. This attitude of yours needs to stop before you damage this family permanently." December 23rd began like any other day. I woke early, made coffee, and reviewed my final Christmas preparations while Marcus slept in. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon, and despite the tension with my parents, I felt a quiet satisfaction looking at our beautifully decorated home. Everything was ready for the perfect Christmas, even if it wouldn't unfold exactly as I'd planned. The notification for a new voicemail came as I was wrapping Marcus's final gift. Seeing Dad on the caller ID, I assumed he was calling with another change to the Christmas plans. I pressed play and put the phone on speaker while continuing to fold the wrapping paper corners. His voice stopped me cold. "Sarah, this is your father. After discussing things with your mother, we've decided that Christmas is off this year, at least with you. Your constant questioning of our finances and life choices has become intolerable. We're your parents, not your children or your clients. Since you're so concerned about money, you should expect a call from our lawyer after the holidays about removing your name from our mortgage. You've made your priorities clear, and sadly, family isn't among them. Don't call back. We need space from your controlling behavior." The gift ribbon slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. I replayed the message, certain I had misunderstood something. The second time was worse. The cold fury in Dad's voice, the finality of his words. My vision blurred and a strange ringing filled my ears. This wasn't a negotiation or even an argument. It was a complete severing. Marcus found me sitting motionless among scattered wrapping paper, staring at nothing. When I wordlessly handed him my phone and played the message, his expression shifted from concern to disbelief to anger. "This is unbelievable, Sarah. After everything you've done for them, and they're threatening you with a lawyer." He knelt beside me, taking my ice, cold hands in his. "What do you want to do? Call them back, go over there." For several minutes, I couldn't speak. Memories cascaded through my mind. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Mom bandaging my scraped knees, family vacations where we'd laughed until our sides hurt, but other memories surfaced too. The subtle guilt trips, the escalating financial demands, the dismissal of my boundaries, the conditional nature of their approval. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a clarity I'd been avoiding for years. "No," I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm not going to call or go over. That's exactly what they want. Me panicking, begging for reconciliation, promising to ignore their financial irresponsibility. Not this time." Marcus watched me carefully. "So, what will you do?" I picked up my phone, typed a single word, "Understood," and sent it to my father. "That's it?" Marcus asked, surprised at my terseness. For now, yes, I replied, a plan already forming in my mind. But I'm done being financially entangled with them. If they want to talk lawyers, I'll beat them to it. That afternoon, while Marcus finished Christmas shopping, I researched mortgage co-signing laws in our state. What I discovered surprised me. As a co-signer who didn't live in the property, I had legal pathways to remove myself from the mortgage without their permission under certain conditions. I made calls to 3 different financial advisors, finally finding one who could see me immediately. Walking into Jennifer Rodriguez's office, that afternoon felt like the first decisive step toward freedom. Your situation is unfortunately common, she said after I explained everything. Family financial entanglements are among the most complicated to unwind emotionally and legally. She reviewed the mortgage documents I'd brought, her expression growing more concerned. Sarah, did you realize they have taken out 2 home equity lines of credit since you co-signed? I hadn't known. Further analysis revealed they had borrowed against nearly all the available equity in the home, an additional $120,000 beyond the original mortgage. The good news, Jennifer explained, is that you're only on the primary mortgage, not these equity lines. But given their spending patterns and these threats, we need to act quickly to protect you. She recommended a specific attorney specializing in real estate law, making a call that secured me an appointment for later that day. The attorney, Rebecca Chen, reviewed my documents and confirmed what Jennifer had suggested. I could petition for removal based on proof that I no longer had financial interest in or benefit from the property, combined with evidence of the borrower's threatening behavior. It's not instantaneous, she warned, but we can expedite the process given the circumstances. The bank will ultimately make the final decision, but with your excellent credit history and their recent borrowing activity, you have a strong case. Walking to my car afterward, I felt a strange mixture of grief and determination. I was about to sever one of the most fundamental financial ties to my parents, a step that would likely change our relationship forever. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Should I try one more conversation? Give them one more chance to understand my perspective? Then I remembered my father's voicemail, the cold dismissal in his voice, the casual way they had leveraged my financial stability for years while dismissing my concerns. I called Marcus. I'm doing it, I told him. I'm removing myself from their mortgage. His response was immediate and supportive. Whatever you need, I'm here. This is the right move, Sarah. That evening, we canceled our Christmas Eve gathering plans and began the process of returning or repurposing the perishable food I'd purchased. Looking at our beautiful home, decorated for a family celebration that wouldn't happen, I allowed myself 30 minutes to cry for the family I thought we were, for the Christmas I had planned, for the relationship I now realized had been built on emotional manipulation. Then I dried my tears, opened my laptop, and began meticulously documenting every financial transaction between my parents and me over the past 6 years. By midnight, I had compiled irrefutable evidence of a disturbing pattern. Their requests always escalated after my financial successes. Their emergencies were frequently followed by luxury purchases, and their promises of repayment had never once been fulfilled. Armed with this documentation and the guidance from both financial and legal advisors, I went to bed with a plan in place and a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, I felt like I was choosing myself, not selfishly, but in recognition that healthy relationships cannot exist alongside financial exploitation, even when it's disguised as family need. Christmas Eve morning dawned gray and rainy, matching my mood as I prepared for a day very different from what I'd planned. Instead of welcoming family for a joyous celebration, I was gathering bank statements, mortgage documents, and correspondence for my appointment with the bank. Marcus offered to come with me, but this felt like something I needed to handle alone. I'll be fine, I assured him, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Maybe you can start taking down some of the decorations while I'm gone. The Christmas tree and decorations that had brought me so much joy now felt like painful reminders of shattered expectations. The local branch of First National Bank was nearly empty when I arrived. Most people were finishing last-minute shopping or preparing for holiday gatherings, not initiating complex financial procedures. Monica Johnson, the mortgage specialist I'd spoken with earlier, was waiting for me in a small glass, walled office decorated with a tiny artificial tree. "Not how you plan to spend Christmas Eve, I imagine," she said sympathetically, gesturing for me to sit. For the next 2 hours, we reviewed my situation in painstaking detail. I provided the documentation from my attorney about my legal rights as a co-signer, financial statements proving I received no benefit from the property, and evidence of the threatening communication from my father. "This is certainly an unusual situation," Monica admitted, "but not unprecedented. The bank's primary concern is ensuring the loan remains secure." She explained that removing me would require a review of my parents' current financial situation, a process that could potentially trigger a reevaluation of their creditworthiness. If their financial position has deteriorated, or if they've taken on significant additional debt, the bank might require them to refinance under different terms, she warned. "Are you prepared for that possibility?" The question gave me pause. Was I ready to potentially cause my parents serious financial difficulty? The doubt must have shown on my face because Monica added gently, "Sarah, you mentioned they have substantial equity lines already. If they're struggling to manage those, this situation won't improve by maintaining the status quo." She was right, of course. Continuing as their financial safety net wasn't helping them develop better habits. It was enabling behavior that would eventually collapse anyway, potentially taking my financial security down with it. "I understand," I said finally. "Please proceed with the removal process." Monica began preparing the necessary paperwork, explaining each document before I signed. The removal wasn't instantaneous. There would be a review period, during which the bank would evaluate my parents' ability to maintain the mortgage without my income and credit supporting it. Best case scenario, this process is within 72 hours due to our expedited request, she explained. It could take longer with the holidays, but I've flagged it as urgent based on the circumstances. As I signed the final document requesting my removal from the mortgage obligation, my hand trembled slightly. This signature represented more than a financial decision. It was the first concrete step in dismantling a dysfunctional pattern that had defined our relationship for years. Walking to my car afterward, I checked my phone, half expecting angry messages from my parents. There were none, just Christmas wishes from friends and colleagues, unaware of the family drama unfolding. The silence from my parents was both a relief and unsettling. Did they assume their threat had cowed me into submission? Were they enjoying their Christmas Eve, believing they'd successfully put me in my place? Driving home, I passed houses with twinkling lights and families carrying wrapped presents inside, and a wave of grief washed over me. Despite everything, I mourned the loss of the family I had believed in, the one I had desperately tried to preserve through years of financial and emotional concessions. Marcus was waiting with hot chocolate and quiet understanding when I returned. "How did it go?" he asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "The process has started," I replied, leaning into his embrace. "Now we wait." That evening, as darkness fell on Christmas Eve, I experienced moments of paralyzing doubt. Had I overreacted? Should I call my parents and try one more time to work things out? I even picked up my phone several times, finger hovering over my father's contact. Each time, I forced myself to replay his voicemail, reminding myself of the cold dismissal in his voice, the threat of legal action, the years of manipulation. "You're doing the right thing," Marcus reassured me, finding me staring at my silent phone again. "Their reaction to your completely reasonable concerns was to cut you off and threaten you legally. That's not how loving parents behave." He was right. But the rational knowledge didn't ease the emotional turmoil. I'd been raised to believe that family loyalty trumped everything, that good daughters sacrificed for their parents without question or complaint. Breaking free of that programming felt physically painful, like tearing adhesions that had formed around my heart. The bank would be closed for Christmas Day, so nothing would progress until at least December 26th. The waiting period stretched before me like an abyss. To distract myself, I threw my energy into repurposing our Christmas celebration. Marcus and I decided to volunteer at a local homeless shelter Christmas morning, serving breakfast to people who truly had nowhere else to go. It felt fitting somehow, channeling my hurt into service rather than self-pity. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home, but in the dream, the doors and windows were locked against me, while I could see my family celebrating inside without me. I woke at 3:00 a.m., tears streaming down my face. Marcus stirred beside me. Same dream? He asked quietly. It wasn't the first time I'd woken crying since this began. I nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. Come here, he said, pulling me close. You're not alone, Sarah. Not now, not ever. Wrapped in his unwavering support, I eventually drifted back to sleep. Christmas Day passed in a blur of activity at the shelter, followed by a quiet dinner at home with just Marcus and me. My brother David had texted that morning, "Merry Christmas," I guess, but made no mention of our parents or the cancelled family gathering. I replied with a simple, "Merry Christmas to you too," and left it at that. No word came from my parents. The silence was deafening but also instructive. They were still expecting me to make the first move, to come begging for reconciliation. They didn't realize yet that something fundamental had changed. On December 26th, I received confirmation from Monica that my removal request was being processed on an expedited basis. The bank has initiated contact with the primary borrowers. She informed me. We should have a decision within 48 hours. The countdown had begun. I knew that once my parents were notified by the bank, the fragile silence would shatter. With grim determination, I prepared for the storm. The morning after Christmas, I woke with a strange sense of calm. The initial shock and emotional turmoil had settled into a steady resolve. I went through my normal routine morning run, shower, breakfast with Marcus, as if the foundation of my family relationships wasn't being dismantled with each passing hour. Marcus watched me carefully as I sipped my coffee and scrolled through work emails. "You seem different today," he observed, buttering his toast. "More centered." I considered his observation. "I think I've moved past the shock and grief, at least temporarily. Now I'm just determined to see this through." It was true. Having initiated the process, I felt a surprising sense of control, as if I'd finally stepped off a runaway carousel that had been making me dizzy for years. The bank had estimated 48 hours for processing, which meant my parents could be notified any time between today and tomorrow. Each time my phone buzzed, my heart rate spiked. But it was never them. Just friends checking in about Christmas, colleagues with last-minute questions before the new year, promotions from retailers launching post-holiday sales. The ordinary world continued spinning, oblivious to my private upheaval. To channel my nervous energy, I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every financial transaction between my parents and me since I'd started my career. Loan amounts, dates, promises made. Evidence of their subsequent purchases. The pattern was even more disturbing when laid out chronologically. $4,500 for emergency plumbing repairs, followed by Dad's new golf clubs 2 weeks later. $8,000 for catching up on the mortgage. The same month Mom bought designer furniture. $12,000 for medical bills, right before they took a luxury Alaskan cruise. None of these loans had ever been repaid. Over 6 years, the total exceeded $65,000, not including the mortgage I'd co-sign. Seeing the numbers in black and white reinforced my decision. This wasn't ordinary parental support. It was systematic financial exploitation disguised as family need. Marcus found me staring at the spreadsheet, my expression hardening as I added details to each entry. "Building a case?" he asked, peering over my shoulder. "More like creating clarity," I replied. "I need to see the reality without the emotional fog. When they start calling, and they will, I need to remember exactly why I'm doing this." As the day progressed, I experienced waves of conflicting emotions. Determination followed by doubt, righteous anger followed by crushing guilt. During one particularly difficult moment, I found myself on my parents' Facebook page looking at photos from previous Christmases, smiling family portraits that gave no hint of the dysfunction beneath the surface. "This is self-torture," Marcus said gently, closing my laptop. "Come on. Let's get out of the house." We spent the afternoon walking through a nearby nature preserve, the winter sunshine and physical activity helping to quiet my churning thoughts. That evening, just after dinner, the first text arrived from my mother. "Sarah, the bank called today with some concerning information. Please call us immediately." No mention of the voicemail. The cancelled Christmas, the threats, just an expectation that I would jump to address their concerns as I always had before. I showed Marcus the message without responding. "And so it begins," he said, squeezing my hand. "Are you ready?" I nodded, though Ready didn't quite capture the complex mixture of dread and determination I felt. We had discussed my strategy. Maintain silence for the full 48-hour processing period. Don't engage until the removal was complete. Don't give them an opportunity to manipulate me into changing course. The second message came an hour later, this time from Dad. Sarah, this bank situation is a misunderstanding. Call me ASAP. Again, I didn't respond. By the time we went to bed, I had received 5 more increasingly urgent messages. The last one showed the first crack in their facade. Honey, whatever's upset you, we can fix it. Please don't do anything hasty with the mortgage. We need to talk. I slept fitfully that night, dreaming of ringing phones and unsigned documents. The next morning brought the first voicemail from my mother, her voice tight with controlled panic. Sarah, the bank says you're trying to remove yourself from our mortgage. They're reviewing our financials now. You need to call them and stop this process immediately. This isn't a game. This is our home. By noon, the messages were coming every 30 minutes, alternating between my parents with occasional texts from David asking why I wasn't responding to Mom and Dad. I silenced my phone, focusing instead on preparing for the conversation I knew was coming. With Marcus's help, I drafted talking points, clear, unemotional statements about my boundaries, expectations, and the path forward. Remember, Marcus coached, this isn't a negotiation. You're informing them of your decision, not asking for permission. Around 3:00 p.m., I received an email from Monica at the bank. The removal process is proceeding. The primary borrowers have been notified, and the financial review is underway. I'll update you when it's complete. Reading those words, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The process was working. The machinery of financial disentanglement was in motion, independent of my parents' attempts to stop it. By evening, my parents had escalated to having friends and extended family contact me. My Aunt Susan called, clearly uncomfortable with her assigned role. Your parents asked me to reach out. They say there's some confusion about the mortgage. They're pretty upset. Sarah. I explained briefly that this was between my parents and me, thanked her for her concern, and politely ended the call. The pressure was mounting exactly as I had anticipated. This was the pattern. When direct demands didn't work, they mobilized others to apply pressure, making me feel isolated and unreasonable. But this time, with Marcus's steadfast support and my own clarity about the situation, their tactics weren't working. The second morning, marking approximately 48 hours since I'd initiated the process, began with an unexpected development. A call from an unknown number turned out to be Thomas Greenberg, my parents' attorney. Unlike my parents' emotional messages, his voicemail was measured but concerned. Miss Mitchell, this is Thomas Greenberg representing Thomas and Patricia Mitchell. I understand there's a situation developing with their mortgage that requires immediate attention. My clients are extremely concerned about the potential implications. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to discuss resolving this matter before it escalates further. I forwarded the voicemail to Rebecca Chen, my own attorney, who advised me to continue maintaining silence until we received final confirmation from the bank. We're in the home stretch, she assured me. Don't engage until the process is complete. By mid-afternoon, my missed call count had reached a staggering number: 42 calls from my parents, 13 from David, 8 from their lawyer, and 5 from various family friends, 68 missed calls in total. Texts and voicemails piled up, their tone evolving from demanding to pleading as the reality of their situation apparently dawned on them. At 4:17 p.m., the email I'd been waiting for arrived from Monica. Process complete. You have been successfully removed as co-signer from the mortgage on the property at 1842 Maple Lane. The primary borrowers have been notified of this change and its implications for their loan terms going forward. I sat staring at the screen, a complex wave of emotions washing over me. Relief, vindication, grief, and something unexpected: freedom. For the first time in years, my financial future was truly my own. The document attached to Monica's email made it official. I was no longer legally tied to my parents' financial decisions. Whatever happened with their mortgage now was entirely their responsibility. The moment was bittersweet, a necessary separation, but one that carried profound implications for our relationship moving forward. I forwarded the confirmation to Rebecca, who replied almost immediately. Congratulations. You've taken an important step toward financial independence. Now we can prepare for the conversation that will inevitably follow. As if on cue, my phone began ringing again. My father's name flashing on the screen with a persistence that would have intimidated me just days earlier. This time, I felt ready to answer, but not quite yet. First, I needed to center myself completely in my new reality. I turned to Marcus, who had been my anchor throughout this process. "It's done," I told him, showing him the email. "I'm free." He pulled me into a tight embrace. "You've been so brave, Sarah. I'm incredibly proud of you." Tomorrow, I would begin the process of establishing new boundaries with my family. Boundaries based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. Tonight, I would allow myself to process the complex emotions of this necessary ending. The calls continued into the evening, but for once, I didn't feel responsible for immediately addressing my parents' crisis. Their financial reckoning had been inevitable. I had simply stopped postponing it at my own expense. As the 48-hour window closed, I prepared to enter a new phase, one where I would engage, but on completely different terms than ever before. The morning after receiving confirmation that I'd been removed from the mortgage, I woke to find 68 missed calls accumulated over the past 2 days. 37 from Dad, 22 from Mom, 5 from David, and 4 from unknown numbers that voicemails revealed were from my parents' lawyer. The sheer volume was staggering. Nearly 3 calls per hour around the clock for 2 days straight. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold as I methodically listened to each voicemail, documenting the progression of their reactions in a notebook. The evolution was telling. The earliest messages were commanding, "Sarah, call us immediately about this bank nonsense." Then came indignation. "I can't believe you would do this without discussing it with us first. This is completely irresponsible." As hours passed without my response, the tone shifted to fake concern. "Honey, we're worried about you. This isn't like you. Has Marcus put you up to this?" Next came thinly veiled threats. "You don't want to damage our relationship permanently over a misunderstanding. Think about what you're doing to this family." By the second day, panic had set in. "The bank is asking for financial statements. We don't have. They're talking about reassessing loan terms. Please, Sarah, you need to fix this." The final messages revealed desperation. "Sarah, please. We could lose the house. Everything we've worked for. Don't do this to us." My father's voice, which had been so cold and dismissive in his Christmas Eve message, now trembled with fear. My mother openly sobbed in her last voicemail, begging me to call them back. The messages from their lawyer, Thomas Greenberg, were more measured, but conveyed increasing urgency. "Ms. Mitchell, my clients are facing potential significant financial restructuring due to your actions. I strongly encourage you to contact me to discuss potential remedies before their position deteriorates further." David's messages were the most personally cutting. "What the hell, Sarah? Mom's having anxiety attacks. Dad hasn't slept. All because you're throwing some tantrum about Christmas. Grow up and fix this now." The irony of being told to grow up by my younger brother, who still lived rent-free with our parents, was not lost on me. Marcus sat beside me as I finished the last voicemail, his expression a mixture of concern and support. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. "Oddly calm," I replied finally, "and certain. For the first time in years, I feel certain about setting these boundaries." I called Rebecca Chen, my attorney, updating her on the barrage of communication and seeking her guidance before responding. "This reaction is exactly why we expedited the process," she noted. "They clearly relied on your financial backing more than they admitted. Now that you've heard them out, I think it's time for a clear, documented response from our side." Following Rebecca's advice, I spent the afternoon crafting a comprehensive email to my parents, their lawyer, and Rebecca. It detailed my decision, the reasons behind it, and my conditions for future communication, all expressed in factual, unemotional language. No accusations, no recriminations, just clear statements of reality and boundaries. "I have removed myself from the mortgage at 1842 Maple Lane effective December 27th. This decision is final and legally executed. This action follows years of financial entanglement that has become untenable," culminating in the threatening voicemail I received on December 23rd stating Christmas was off, and I should expect a call from your lawyer. I attached a transcript of that voicemail for reference, along with a summary of the $65,000 in unpaid loans over the past 6 years. I continued. Moving forward, I am open to rebuilding our relationship, but only on terms that respect my financial and emotional boundaries. These include 1. No requests for money, loans, or financial guarantees of any kind. 2. Acknowledgement of past patterns of financial manipulation. 3. Family counseling if we choose to attempt reconciliation. I concluded, I am taking a 30-day break from communication to allow everyone time to process this change. After January 27th, I welcome conversation that respects these boundaries. Any contact attempting to manipulate, threaten, or pressure me before that date will result in an extended period of no contact. After reviewing it with Marcus and making a few adjustments, I sent the email, then immediately turned off my phone. 30 days of peace, I said, looking at Marcus with a mixture of determination and relief. I need that time to rebuild my sense of self without their voices in my head. Marcus nodded, understanding completely. I think that's wise. They need time to accept that their old tactics won't work anymore. We had anticipated that my parents might escalate to showing up at our house, so we had made arrangements to stay with Marcus's brother in a neighboring city for a few days. As we packed overnight bags, I felt a strange sense of being a refugee from my own family, displaced by toxic dynamics I could no longer tolerate. The next morning, before we left, a certified letter arrived from Thomas Greenberg. Inside was a formal response that struck a markedly different tone from his urgent voicemails. My clients have asked me to evaluate their options regarding the mortgage situation. Upon review of the documentation, I must advise them that your removal as co-signer was executed legally and appropriately. The bank's reassessment of their loan terms is a standard procedure following such a change. The letter continued. While my clients are understandably distressed by this development and its timing, I have counseled them that pursuing legal action against you would be inadvisable and unlikely to succeed. I have recommended they focus instead on restructuring their finances to accommodate the new mortgage terms. Reading between the lines, it was clear their lawyer had recognized the weakness of their position and advised them accordingly. This confirmation that I had acted within my rights provided additional validation of my decision. By that afternoon, we were settled at Marcus's brother's apartment, temporarily insulated from the immediate fallout. My email auto response was active, informing anyone who contacted me that I was taking a break from communication until January 27th. I had notified my workplace that I was dealing with a family situation and would be working remotely for a week. Though I'd turned off my personal phone, I checked my email once daily, filtering messages through Marcus to protect my peace of mind. 3 days after sending my email, the first message from David arrived. Not the angry tirade I'd expected, but something more thoughtful. Sarah, I was wrong to come at you like I did. I didn't know about Dad's voicemail or all the money they've borrowed. Mom finally showed me their credit card statements and home equity line. It's worse than I realized. I'm trying to help them figure things out, but it's a mess. I'm sorry for what I said. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. His message gave me hope that at least one family relationship might survive this upheaval. A week into my self-imposed communication break, I received an unexpected email from my mother's sister, Aunt Catherine, who had always been the family truth teller. Sarah, I've heard Thomas and Patricia's version of events, but I know there are always two sides. Whatever happened, know that standing up for yourself isn't wrong. They've always leaned too heavily on you. Take the time you need. Family should lift you up, not drain you dry. Her support was a balm to my soul, confirmation that I wasn't crazy or selfish for establishing boundaries. As January unfolded, I worked with my therapist, Dr. Elena Martinez, to process the complex emotions surrounding my decision. What you're feeling is grief, she explained during one particularly difficult session. Not just for the relationship you've lost, but for the relationship you deserved but never had. It's also grief for the identity you're shedding, the role of perpetual caretaker and financial safety net. With her guidance, I developed a communication plan for eventually re-engaging with my family, a structured approach that included recognizing manipulation tactics, setting clear time limits for conversations, and having prepared responses for predictable scenarios. You're not cutting them off permanently, Dr. Martinez reminded me. You're creating a healthier dynamic that protects your well-being. That's not selfish. It's necessary for any relationship to be sustainable. As the end of January approached, I felt stronger and clearer than I had in years. The constant anxiety that had accompanied every interaction with my parents had diminished, replaced by a calm certainty about my boundaries. I was ready for whatever came next, whether reconciliation on new terms or the painful acceptance that some relationships cannot be salvaged if one party refuses to acknowledge harmful patterns. On January 26th, the day before my communication break was set to end, I received a brief email from my father. The first direct contact from either of my parents since my boundary setting message. It contained just 3 sentences. We've met with a financial advisor to address our situation. Your mother and I would like to talk when you're ready. We understand things need to change. It wasn't an apology or an acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused, but it was a start. A small indication that perhaps they were beginning to recognize the reality of our new dynamic. Tomorrow I would respond, taking the first careful step toward whatever our relationship would become. But it would be on my terms, with my boundaries firmly in place, and with the knowledge that I was no longer financially tethered to their choices. 24 hours after receiving my father's brief email, my self-imposed communication break officially ended. After carefully considering my response with input from both Marcus and Dr. Martinez, I sent a short reply. I appreciate your willingness to talk. I suggest meeting at Riverside Cafe this Saturday at 11:00 a.m. I'll be bringing Marcus for support. Choosing a public location was deliberate, a neutral space where emotional outbursts would be constrained, with a clear endpoint since the cafe closed at 1 p.m. Having Marcus present wasn't negotiable. I needed his grounding presence to help me maintain my boundaries. Dad replied within minutes. Would prefer to meet at home, just family. His attempt to control the terms wasn't surprising. I responded firmly, Riverside Cafe Saturday 11:00 a.m. with Marcus. Those are my terms for this first conversation. After a longer pause, he acquiesced. Fine, we'll be there. The days leading up to Saturday were filled with preparation. Dr. Martinez helped me anticipate various scenarios and practice responses that maintained boundaries without escalating conflict. Remember, she advised, you're not responsible for their emotions or reactions. Focus on clearly stating your position, not justifying or defending it. The morning of the meeting, I woke with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Marcus found me at the kitchen table, rehearsing my talking points. You've got this, he assured me, squeezing my shoulders. Just remember, you're not the one who needs to fix anything here. When we arrived at the cafe, my parents were already seated at a corner table. Mom looked smaller somehow, her usually perfect makeup unable to hide the strain of recent weeks. Dad sat rigidly, his jaw tight. Neither stood to hug me, the first indication that this was indeed a different kind of family meeting. Marcus and I sat across from them, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. You've put us in a very difficult position, Sarah. His opening line confirmed my suspicion that we weren't here for an apology. The bank has given us 60 days to either qualify for the mortgage on our own or find a new co-signer. Our monthly payment will increase by $640 if we refinance under current rates. I let his statement hang in the air, resisting the familiar urge to offer solutions or express sympathy. After an uncomfortable silence, I responded evenly. I understand this is a challenging transition. As outlined in my email, I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but not our financial entanglement. Mom interjected, her voice quavering. How could you do this to us, Sarah? After everything we've done for you, we're your parents. It was the guilt tactic I'd anticipated. I took a slow breath before responding. I'm not here to relitigate the past. I'm here to discuss how we move forward with healthier boundaries. Dad's face flushed. Boundaries. We gave you life, raised you, paid for your education. Now when we need help, you talk about boundaries. Marcus shifted beside me, a subtle reminder of his support. I maintained eye contact with my father. Yes, boundaries. Like not threatening me with lawyers when I expressed concern about financial decisions. Like not canceling Christmas as punishment for questioning the mortgage I co-signed. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. That was your father's anger talking. He didn't mean it. He did mean it. I countered calmly. And it was the culmination of a pattern, not an isolated incident. I placed a folder on the table containing printouts of my financial documentation. Over the past 6 years, I've provided $65,000 in loans that were never repaid. Signed a $380,000 mortgage, and been added as guarantor to credit cards I never used. That's in addition to the emotional cost of being made to feel selfish whenever I question these arrangements. Dad barely glanced at the documents. So you're keeping score. That's what family means to you. A balance sheet. No, I replied steadily. Family means mutual respect and support, not one-way financial dependence disguised as parental authority. Our conversation continued in this vein for nearly an hour, my parents alternating between guilt tactics, minimizing their actions, and expressing indignation at my betrayal. Each time, I calmly redirected to the core issue: their behavior had damaged our relationship, and rebuilding would require acknowledgement and changed patterns. The turning point came unexpectedly when I mentioned the Caribbean cruise they'd booked while claiming to be unable to pay their property taxes. Dad waved dismissively. That was a special anniversary celebration. Everyone deserves some luxury. Funded by whose luxury? I asked quietly. The $12,000 I gave you that month for what you said were medical bills. Mom's expression changed suddenly, eyes widening as she turned to Dad. You told me that cruise was paid for with your year-end bonus. A heavy silence fell over the table. Dad shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Mom's questioning gaze. Thomas, she pressed, did you use Sarah's money for our cruise? His non-answer was answer enough. Mom turned to me, genuine shock on her face. I didn't know Sarah. He told me different stories about where the money was coming from. It was the first crack in their united front. The first indication that perhaps their financial deception had layers I hadn't even recognized. For the remainder of our meeting, a subtle shift occurred. Mom asked more questions, listening with growing distress as I outlined the pattern of financial manipulation. Dad became increasingly defensive, eventually muttering that he needed air and stepping outside. With him gone, Mom spoke more freely. Things have been worse than I realized. The home equity lines, credit card debt. I signed papers without fully understanding what they meant. Thomas handles the finances. Mom, I said gently, you're an adult with equal responsibility in this marriage. Not knowing doesn't excuse the impact on me. She nodded slowly, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I know, I don't know how we got here or how to fix it. As we prepared to leave, Dad returned, his expression closed and defensive. I outlined my conditions for moving forward: financial transparency, family counseling, and absolute adherence to the boundary of no money requests. And if we refuse these conditions? Dad asked stiffly. Then we'll have very limited contact, I replied simply. I won't subject myself to patterns that have proven harmful. Outside the cafe, Marcus held my hand tightly as we watched my parents drive away. You did amazing, he said. How are you feeling? Lighter, I realized, like I've finally said things I've needed to say for years. The aftermath of our confrontation unfolded in unexpected ways. That evening, David called, his first direct contact since his apologetic email. Mom's a mess, he began, but without his earlier accusatory tone. She says she didn't know about a lot of the financial stuff. That Dad kept her in the dark. And you believe her? I asked cautiously. He sighed heavily. I don't know what to believe anymore. I found papers in Dad's office yesterday. They've remortgaged the house twice. There are credit cards I never knew about. It's worse than either of us realized, Sarah. For the first time, David and I had a genuine conversation about our parents' behavior. Not as adversaries, but as adult siblings trying to understand a troubling family dynamic. 2 days later, I received separate emails from my parents. Mom's was contrite, acknowledging her complicity through inaction and expressing willingness to try family counseling. Dad's was briefer and less yielding, but he agreed to discuss these issues further in a professional setting. Their lawyer, Thomas Greenberg, also reached out with an unexpected disclosure. In the interest of transparency, I feel professionally obligated to inform you that your parents consulted me last year about adding your name to additional financial instruments without your direct knowledge. I advised against this course of action as it would potentially constitute fraud. This revelation confirmed my worst suspicions. The financial entanglement might have gone even deeper had they found a less ethical attorney. As January turned to February, our family entered uncharted territory. The mortgage situation remained unresolved, my parents scrambling to either qualify on their own or find an alternative solution. Our relationship hung in a fragile balance, the old patterns broken, but new ones not yet established. What had become clear through our confrontation was that the financial manipulation had been largely driven by my father, with my mother's complicit ignorance enabling his behavior. This didn't excuse her role, but it added nuance to our path forward. The power dynamic had fundamentally shifted. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't approaching my parents from a position of obligation or guilt, but from a place of clear-eyed agency. Whether our relationship could be rebuilt on healthier terms remained to be seen, but I had done the necessary work of breaking the damaging patterns of the past. As Dr. Martinez reminded me in our session following the confrontation, family relationships should be maintained because they're nurturing and supportive, not out of obligation or fear. You've created the space for something healthier to potentially grow. That space, painful as it was to create, felt like the most honest gift I could give to both my family and myself. By mid-February, news of our family rift had spread through the extended family grapevine, creating ripple effects I hadn't fully anticipated. Aunt Susan called first, her voice tight with disapproval. "Family problems should stay private, Sarah. Your parents are devastated by this public embarrassment." Uncle Jim took a different stance, calling to offer support. About time someone stood up to Thomas's financial shenanigans. He tried to rope me into signing a boat loan last year. Cousins weighed in via text and social media messages, some expressing sympathy, others suggesting I was overreacting to normal family dynamics. The spectrum of reactions highlighted how differently people viewed financial boundaries in family relationships. My maternal grandmother, Nana Rose, surprised everyone by firmly taking my side. At 82, she drove herself to my house one Saturday morning, armed with homemade cookies and blunt wisdom. "Your grandfather and I helped your parents when they were starting out," she explained, settling into my sofa. Small things. Down payment for their first apartment. Occasional grocery money when times were tight. But Thomas developed a taste for assistance that never went away. "It worried your grandfather to his dying day." Her validation meant more than she could know. Confirmation from someone who loved my parents but recognized the unhealthy patterns. Meanwhile, my parents were facing the harsh reality of their financial situation without my support. Dad reluctantly took a part-time job at a local hardware store to supplement his declining real estate income. Mom began selling her extensive collection of designer purses and jewelry on consignment. David reported they were meeting with financial advisors and considering downsizing to a smaller home. Painful but necessary steps toward living within their actual means. The bank had extended their qualification period by 30 days after they made a good faith payment toward the principal, but the deadline still loomed. David's role evolved in unexpected ways. Initially my parents' defender, he had become a reluctant mediator as he discovered more about their financial reality. "Dad had a complete meltdown yesterday," he confided during one of our weekly phone calls. The financial advisor laid everything out: the credit card debt, the underwater mortgage, the loan from his brother he never repaid. Mom just sat there getting paler and paler. I didn't know what to say. For the first time in our adult lives, David and I were truly talking, not as competitors for parental approval, but as siblings navigating a family crisis. He admitted feeling resentful at first about my financial independence. "You always made it look so easy. Great job, nice home, healthy relationship. I guess I bought into Dad's narrative that you were just lucky, not that you actually worked for it." In turn, I acknowledged envying his seemingly uncomplicated relationship with our parents. "You never seemed to disappoint them like I did. Every life choice I made was scrutinized, while you got automatic approval." These honest conversations began healing a sibling relationship that had been strained by our parents' differential treatment. 3 weeks after our confrontation at the cafe, we attempted our first family counseling session. I found a therapist specializing in financial trauma and family systems, Dr. Abigail Chen, who agreed to see us together. The session was tense but productive, with Dr. Chen establishing clear ground rules about communication and respect. Dad participated minimally, answering direct questions but offering little voluntary insight. Mom was more engaged, tearfully acknowledging how her passivity had enabled destructive patterns. I just wanted everyone to be happy, she explained. It seemed easier to go along with things than to create conflict. Dr. Chen gently challenged this perspective, but someone was bearing the cost of that conflict avoidance. In this case, Sarah. The most revealing moment came when Dr. Chen asked my parents to articulate what they wanted from our relationship moving forward. Mom immediately said, "I just want my daughter back in my life." Dad's answer was more telling. "I want things to go back to how they were." When prompted to elaborate, he admitted, "I want Sarah to trust us again financially." His honesty, however problematic, was at least a starting point for real discussion. After the session, Dr. Chen met with me privately. "Your father shows signs of financial dependence disorder," she explained. "It's similar to other dependencies. The brain develops reward pathways around getting financial support, making it extremely difficult to change the behavior without significant intervention." She recommended I maintain firm boundaries while they worked through their issues, suggesting separate counseling for my parents alongside our family sessions. The next month brought small, hesitant steps toward rebuilding. Mom began meeting me for coffee weekly without Dad, our conversations gradually becoming more authentic. During one such meeting, she confessed, "I've been looking at our old Christmas photos. Remember how you always wanted to put the star on top of the tree? Thomas would lift you up on his shoulders, even when you got too big, and you'd both laugh about how you'd topple over." Her eyes welled with tears. "I keep thinking about how we got from there to here." It was the first time either parent had expressed nostalgia for our relationship without using it as emotional leverage. Progress with Dad was slower and more complicated. At our third family counseling session, he finally admitted feeling humiliated by needing financial help. A father should provide for his family, not the other way around, he stated gruffly. Every time Sarah succeeded, it reminded me of my failures. This revelation explained so much about his behavior: the minimizing of my accomplishments, the escalating financial demands after my promotions, the constant reminders of all he had done for me. His self-worth had become dangerously entangled with financial control. By early April, my parents had made their decision about the house. They would sell it and move to a smaller condo that they could afford without financial support. The process was painful for them, involving letting go of not just a home, but the facade of financial success they had maintained for years. I maintained my boundary about not helping financially, but offered practical support by connecting them with a reliable real estate agent and helping Mom sort through decades of accumulated possessions. On moving day, I arrived with coffee and bagels, prepared to help box remaining items. Dad answered the door, looking older and more subdued than I had ever seen him. "Thanks for coming," he said simply. The first acknowledgement that my presence was a choice, not an obligation. As we worked alongside movers, Mom found a box of my childhood artwork they had saved. Homemade cards expressing childhood adoration for my parents, school projects proudly brought home for their approval. "You were such a thoughtful child," she said softly, always trying so hard to make us proud. For a moment we all stood in silence, the gap between that loving family and our current reality painfully evident. The process of healing remained complex and nonlinear. Some days brought progress, like when Dad actually apologized for the Christmas voicemail without qualifiers or excuses. Other days featured backsliding, Mom asking if I might just help a little with moving expenses, then quickly withdrawing the request when she saw my expression. Through it all, I maintained the boundaries I had established, neither yielding to guilt nor wielding my newfound power punitively. By late spring, a new normal had begun to emerge. My parents were living within their means, for perhaps the first time in decades. Their condo modest but manageable, their lifestyle adjusted to reality rather than appearance. Our relationships were fundamentally changed but not destroyed, more honest, if less comfortable, with new respect for stated boundaries. Most importantly, I had broken a cycle that would otherwise have continued draining my financial and emotional resources indefinitely. The experience had taught me to recognize similar patterns in other relationships, leading me to establish healthier boundaries with friends who consistently forgot their wallets at dinner or colleagues who expected free marketing advice outside work hours. As Dr. Martinez observed in one of our sessions, this wasn't just about money. It was about recognizing your inherent value beyond what you could provide to others. That recognition, hard-won through painful family reconfiguration, had become the unexpected gift of this difficult journey. 6 months after that fateful Christmas voicemail, summer sunshine warmed the patio of my backyard as I arranged chairs in a semicircle. "Is this enough seating?" I asked Marcus, who was manning the grill. "David said he might bring a friend, but I'm not sure if that's still happening." Marcus looked up from the sizzling hamburgers. "Better add one more just in case. First family barbecue at our place. Pretty big milestone." I nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and quiet pride. Today marked the first casual family gathering since the mortgage confrontation. A deliberately low-pressure event designed to test our new family dynamic. No holiday expectations. No overnight stays. Just a few hours of shared food and conversation. As I set out plates and utensils, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The initial shock and pain had gradually given way to something unexpected. A more authentic relationship with my family, built on reality rather than obligation or pretense. My parents arrived precisely on time. Another new development. Before, they would have shown up early with opinions about my hosting choices or called last minute with some reason for delay. Dad carried a store, bought dessert, Mom a bouquet of summer flowers. "The yard looks wonderful," Mom commented, genuinely admiring the garden beds Marcus and I had spent spring weekends creating. "You always did have a good eye for color combinations." Dad handed me the dessert box somewhat awkwardly. "Didn't know what you might want, so I got the sampler thing. The bakery lady said it's popular." The small gesture, choosing something with me in mind without assuming he knew best, represented significant growth. David arrived shortly after, bringing his friend Donna, a soft-spoken librarian he'd been dating for 2 months. Their relationship seemed to be nurturing a more thoughtful side of my brother that I'd rarely seen before. As we settled around the patio table with our food, the conversation remained lightweight. Neighborhood developments, David's new job in IT support, a funny story about Mom's book club, selecting an accidentally risque novel. Beneath the ordinary topics, though I noticed subtle but significant changes. Dad didn't dominate the conversation as he once would have. Mom asked follow-up questions about my recent work projects, showing genuine interest rather than comparing them to some imagined better alternative. Most notably, no one mentioned money, not their financial situation, not my career success, not the cost of anything discussed. It wasn't that we were avoiding the topic. Rather, it had been rightfully relegated to its proper place in our relationship, just one aspect of life, not the defining factor in our interactions. After dessert, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Dad as I brewed coffee. He leaned against the counter, looking out the window at Marcus and David discussing the vegetable garden. "I've been wanting to say something," he began, his voice quieter than usual, but I needed to be sure I meant it first. I waited, giving him space to continue at his own pace. "I'm sorry, Sarah. Not just for the voicemail or the mortgage situation, but for years of taking advantage of your success and generosity. I convinced myself it was my due as your father." He turned to face me directly. "The financial counselor we've been seeing helped me see that I was using money as a form of control because I felt inadequate in other ways. It's no excuse, but I'm working to understand it so I don't repeat the pattern." The apology I had once desperately wanted now came when I no longer needed it for closure. Yet it still mattered. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. "It helps." We carried the coffee outside together, a small moment of ordinary cooperation that felt symbolic of our gradually healing relationship. Later that evening, after everyone had left, Marcus and I sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies appear in the gathering dusk. "So," he asked, "how do you think it went?" I considered the question carefully. Better than I expected. Different, but in good ways. Like we're all actually seeing each other clearly for the first time. The changes extended beyond my immediate family. In the months following the mortgage confrontation, I had re-examined all my relationships through the lens of this experience, identifying subtle patterns of financial or emotional imbalance I had previously accepted as normal. My friendship with Stephanie, who consistently forgot her wallet at our lunches, had evolved after a candid conversation about reciprocity. My tendency to volunteer at work had been replaced with healthier professional boundaries. Even my relationship with Marcus had deepened through the experience, his unwavering support giving me confidence to address smaller inequities before they became entrenched patterns. Perhaps most significantly, I had developed a new relationship with myself. The crushing guilt that had accompanied any act of self-care or boundary setting had diminished, replaced by recognition that maintaining my well-being wasn't selfish, but necessary. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, had helped me identify and challenge the deeply ingrained belief that my value was tied to what I could provide for others. The greatest gift of this difficult experience, she noted in our most recent session, has been watching you reclaim your inherent worth independent of your usefulness to others. My parents' situation had stabilized in ways that would have been impossible had I continued enabling their financial irresponsibility. Living in the condo they could actually afford, they had begun rebuilding their financial foundation. Dad had taken a part-time position at a real estate training center, finding unexpected satisfaction in mentoring new agents. Mom had started a small alterations business, utilizing sewing skills she had previously treated as just a hobby. They would never be wealthy, but for the first time in decades, they were living honestly within their means. David had also grown through the experience, developing independence I hadn't thought possible. After moving out of our parents' house into a shared apartment, he had discovered capabilities previously obscured by the dysfunctional family dynamic. Our sibling relationship, once characterized by rivalry and resentment, had evolved into something resembling actual friendship. As summer transitioned to fall, we created new holiday traditions. Instead of the elaborate, financially strained celebrations of the past, we planned simpler gatherings focused on connection rather than appearance. For Thanksgiving, we would all contribute dishes to a meal at David's apartment. Christmas would be a brunch at the local botanical gardens with a strict spending limit on gifts. The approaching holiday season no longer filled me with dread, but with cautious optimism about continuing to build healthier family connections. On a crisp September evening, almost exactly 9 months after the voicemail that had changed everything, I sat at my desk writing in the journal Dr. Martinez had suggested I keep. Looking back over the entries from those first painful weeks, I could trace the evolution not just of my family relationships, but of my understanding of what family should be. True family, I had discovered, supports your growth rather than sabotaging it to maintain control. True family respects boundaries rather than treating them as betrayal. True love empowers rather than exploits. The mortgage situation, as painful as it had ultimately been the catalyst for transforming unhealthy patterns that might otherwise have continued indefinitely. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and others is to disrupt destructive cycles, even when that disruption causes temporary pain. I had learned that standing firm in my worth didn't mean abandoning love. It meant creating space for more authentic love to potentially flourish. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between maintaining peace and establishing necessary boundaries with family? I'd love to know how you handled it. Comment below and share your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's sometimes the most loving choice we can make. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and growth. Remember, true family supports your wings. It doesn't clip them to keep you close. This story explores themes of financial manipulation, family boundaries, and personal growth. While the characters and specific details are fictional, the emotional journey reflects real experiences many people face when dealing with toxic family dynamics. The key message is that love without respect isn't truly love, and that setting boundaries is an act of self-care, not selfishness. If you're struggling with similar family financial manipulation or boundary issues, consider speaking with a therapist who specializes in family systems or financial abuse. Resources like the National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7230 can provide guidance, as financial abuse is a recognized form of domestic abuse that extends beyond romantic relationships. Remember, you are not responsible for managing other people's emotions or financial problems, even if they are family members. Your worth is not determined by what you can provide to others.